If you haven't read the title, you get one guess as to what this video will be about. I've got ice-type Pokemon, I've got like pretty blue things, I've got Frozen books, and I pulled out my Frozen shirt again. Obviously, this video is going to be about Frozen, my review of Frozen, the original Frozen, and then I will have a second video that will be about the other miscellaneous things, so like the Wreck-It Ralph stuff, the Once Upon a Time stuff, Frozen Fever, Olaf's, adventure, a bunch of those other miscellaneous things that they have with Frozen. That'll be the next Disney video, will be that one. And then down the line, I will have a separate video about Frozen 2, because they are two not 100% separate stories, because like Frozen 2 is a sequel, obviously, but there's too much to do for both of those. Plus, Frozen 2 got its own release. So yeah. Frozen. Yeah, I know. Yes, I love the soundtrack. I do. My dad and I watched it yesterday. I'm singing along with pretty much almost every single song, almost all the lyrics and everything. And yes, I do like Let It Go. I mean, it's beautifully animated sequence, and I'll get to that. But as you can see, I pulled out some more of my books in regards to that, but I missed this the last time when I did a different fairy tale. I do have a Tangled book. Just wanted to show that off. And for those of you who are familiar with it, Frozen is Disney's take on the story of the Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. The Snow Queen. Now, in the actual story of the Snow Queen is actually kind of the villain. She gets very jealous of this boy and girl that are in love, and then she uses the boy to try to do something for her, to try to fix this mirror, and then the girl goes on a quest to find the boy. Eventually they do find each other, and they do get to go home. But in that one, the Snow Queen is more of the villain. And I might do a different thing where I do because I do love Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale so well, because the other ones that he's done are, of course, The Little Mermaid is probably the most famous, the Snow Queen, the Steadfast Tin Soldier, that was part of the Fantasia 2000, the Little Match Girl, which Disney did as a animated short that's on the bonus features for like the 20th or 30th anniversary for The Little Mermaid. So he's done quite a few different fairy tales. There's more than that, obviously, but those are some of the more famous ones. And I might do a video at some point where I kind of talk a little bit more about Hans Christian Andersen himself, or a little bit more about the different fairy tales that he's done, but that'll be down the line a bit. But yes, in the original version of The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, the Snow Queen is the villain. And then in Disney's version, Elsa was originally set to be the villain. They were going to have Elsa be a villain that either redeemed herself or was just the straight up villain and stay a little bit more true to the story. But then literally, Alan Menken wrote Let It Go, and they're just like, we can't have her be the villain. We can't. This song makes her sympathetic. Now, I have stated before that depending on as to why the villain is the villain, sympathetic is not a bad thing. Sympathetic for Scar, not so much. Sympathetic for Gaston, again, by a technicality, he is trying to protect the townspeople, but because we're, friends with Belle and the Beast and everything, and we see it through their eyes, that's different. Maleficent, Maleficent, the live-action movies took a different turn with that, and they're like, this is why she's a villain, and then now she's no longer the villain, and she redeems herself. With Frozen, they were like, okay, well, let's see, and then they shifted gears, and it was like, well, let's make them sisters, and then this is what's gonna happen. So we'll just dive into Frozen. It came out in 2013, so that was about 8 years ago at this point in time, and it is pretty much the biggest Disney movie for the past 20 years for all intents and purposes. Nothing against the other movies that have come out since then or before then, because Most of them I love. I've talked about most of them already, and I'll be talking about the rest of them, of course. But for the most part, it's like this thing that blew up so much. And very much kind of saved, again, the Disney animation department. Not that they were as in trouble as they were with, like, Little Mermaid and the Disney Renaissance. But what we do see, the film opens with these, band of ice harvesters that are out collecting ice from the frozen lake and the Scandinavian mountains, and they're singing the song Frozen Heart, which, when I'm listening to the song after, I'm more familiar with the story, I'm like, kind of the entire solution to the story is in the song. Because it's like how, cold and harsh and strong and powerful the ice is, but, there's, other things that can whittle away the ice, other things that can fight against the ice. So, and we see this 8-year-old boy, Kristoff, and his reindeer Sven, and they're part of the group, and they're helping harvest the ice, and we never get any specific explanation as to, okay, so obviously he's an ice harvester, that's what he wants to be. Are one of these guys his dad or uncle or like grandfather or something? We never get an explanation of that. And then they depart and they're heading off towards Arendelle. And then we cut to the castle of Arendelle, where, beautiful castle, where we are introduced to these two girls, 5-year-old Princess Anna and 8-year-old Princess Elsa. During this time frame, the two girls, we do kind of get this, difference in their personality. Anna is much more restless and playful and everything, and Elsa can be brought to being more playful in regards to being around Anna. So they go off, and it's in the middle of the night, so they go off to the ballroom, and Elsa is revealed to have these ice powers. And she is able to use these ice powers to create snow, to cover the floor in ice so they can skate around, and all this other stuff. And, like, her and Anna are playing and having fun, and, just, like, build the snowman that's named Olaf, that likes warm hugs, which, of course, comes back later. And, they're just playing and having fun and everything. And the two girls end up, what happens is Anna is like jumping from pile of snow to pile of snow that Elsa is creating. And unfortunately, Elsa slips and she accidentally hits Anna with some of the ice magic, and it kind of like hits her head, and we see one of her, like a streak of white appear in her hair. Kind of rogue style in this case. We're going to go for an X-Men reference. And of course, their parents show up, King Agnar and Queen Iduna. Show up into the ballroom, and they, of course, know about Elsa's magic and everything. Unfortunately, Anna has now kind of been affected by the magic, and she is slowly becoming colder and colder to the touch. So they race to the library, they find this book about where to find these trolls, and then they're running, racing their way to where these trolls are. On the way there, they're riding in the sleigh, and like all along the ground, there's like more and more ice forming on the sleigh. This is for the first hint that we get where Elsa's magic is tied to her emotions. Because when Anna first got hurt, more ice and such seemed to appear around them in the room, building up the walls and everything and making it, freezing the room over. And of course, behind the sled right now is a bunch of, ice forming behind the sled. Sven and Kristoff see this, and they then follow the sleigh, and they watch as the royal family interact with these trolls, these boulders that can talk, and they come to life. And we talk to the oldest one, whose name is Grandpappy, and he looks over Anna, and he asks, if Elsa was cursed with the power, born with it, and we get the born with it. I would assume cursed with it would have been a slightly different answer if in regards to it was like, oh no, Elsa was cursed to have these powers. It's not that she was born with them. Admittedly, between Frozen 2 and Frozen in Once Upon a Time, which Frozen Once Upon a Time will get talked about in the next video, we do get two different origins as to why Elsa has these powers. But Grandpappy looks over Anna, and he explains that, well, it's only her head, her mind, that's kind of been hit by the magic. So if I take away the memory, or if I shift the memories and take away the magic but leave the fun, then Anna will be okay. But if it had been her heart that had been frozen, then it would have been a lot worse, because he says the heart is not as easily changed as the head. Unfortunately, this means that Elsa can no longer use her magic in front of Anna, and she can't really use her magic in front of anyone at this point in time, beyond her parents, because Anna no longer knows that she has this magic. And what ends up happening is Anna and Elsa are now kind of separated. They've been in the same room before. Now Elsa has her own room and Anna has her own room. And Elsa is much more closed off from her sister and her parents. Grandpappy warned Elsa that like her powers will grow, and although they are beautiful, they are dangerous. And if she cannot learn to control them, fear will be her greatest enemy. And admittedly, we basically, as we see throughout the entire movie, if all intents and purposes, if her parents had literally just like taken her to Grandpappy and like had him help her learn how to use her power, instead of like shutting herself off from the world and shutting herself off from her power to the point where she barely uses it, well, we wouldn't have had as much of an interesting story now, would we? Yeah. But what we see happen is, of course, this is where we get the whole "do you want to build a snowman" sequence, where Elsa is much more isolated and Anna is there, and she, of course, wants to spend, time with her sister and everything. And Anna, of course, does not understand what's going on. It's the last thing she remembered was that they had been having fun and everything, and then now her sister doesn't want to seem to be around her or around really anyone. And like they've closed off the castle, they've closed the gates, they've shuttered all the windows and everything to keep Elsa kind of isolated. Admittedly, no, not a good idea. Should not do that. Do not isolate the person with powers. In this case, let them learn how to use their powers. Scarlet Witch is a very good example of this if you want to go for a Marvel reference for this. Scarlet Witch is a very good example. Her power grew as she grew. And, things that we've learned from WandaVision imply that she's almost always had this power. And then just being, exposed to the Mind Stone just increased her power. And, we see this, her power grows with her emotions. The same thing applies to Elsa. The more closed off she is and the more terrified she becomes of her own power and of accidentally hurting anyone, her parents tell her to conceal it, don't feel it. They give her gloves that she can wear to keep her a little bit more isolated. And like, she doesn't even want her parents to like hug her at this point in time, and she barely sees her sister. Elsa is like trapped in her room most of the time, probably studying most of the time because Elsa does seem to be extremely smart. But during this whole time frame, Anna is left to roam the palace for, the next 10 years all on her own. We get the whole, the "do you want to build a snowman," as I said. And we just see Anna, like, playing in the palace and being on her own. She's like, I started talking to the pictures on the walls. And, just like all this explanation. It's like she's been on her own for a while now. And, her parents are still there, but her parents are the king and queen, and therefore they have royal duties that they must, perform. They have to rule the kingdom, they have to take care of all this other stuff that comes along with being a king and a queen. And we just watch as, okay, so how is this going to change? Anna is kind of Elsa, they're both isolated in their own way. Yes, Elsa is only trapped in her room and Anna is only trapped within the confines of the castle, but they're still trapped within their own world. And Elsa is much more confined to the point where she barely leaves her room. Not a good thing. And we just see how terrified she is of accidentally hurting her parents anytime that her magic flares up, or accidentally hurting Anna. And of course, Anna doesn't know why Elsa is being isolated. They obviously still see each other at times, but it's very awkward probably whenever they do, like at certain dinners or things like that. Like, it's probably very stilted conversation because like their parents can't reveal anything to Anna because that affects the curse inside of her. And then, of course, over the next 10 years, they're still isolated. And then it comes to their parents are going to go off on a trip. In the first movie, they don't state exactly where they're going. I was even specifically listening to see if they stay where they are going. Because there is a theory that because Frozen takes place kind of, came out 3 years after Tangled, that it takes place in the same universe as Tangled. And as I stated in the Tangled video, we do see Rapunzel and Eugene at the big coronation day. They're coming in when Anna is singing. But it, the prevailing theory was that they were going to go to Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding. That's where their parents were going to go. That they were like cousins. Via what we learned about Frozen 2, that's not true at all. But at the time frame, that was the prevailing theory, and that their ship, and while they're gone, their ship unfortunately sinks after this huge storm, and the ship is lost, and their parents are dead. Therefore, Anna and Elsa are now orphans, and Elsa is now technically the queen. She is the queen to be, or so. She hasn't reached the age of 21 yet. And there's a whole theory that like the ship that Ariel finds at the beginning of The Little Mermaid was, the ship from Arendelle and everything that had the king and queen on it and everything, to tie like those three movies together. Things that have come out with Frozen 2 have stated that no, that's not true. But moving on past the theory pack, Anna and Elsa are, of course, still isolated from each other. Elsa didn't even go to the funeral, and we see inside of her room how it's just completely frosted over with her grief of losing her parents. And she still won't go and communicate with her sister. She still refuses to. And then we cut to 3 years later, and it's the coronation day for Elsa, where she will become queen of Arendelle, and we have all these dignitaries arriving from all over Europe and all these different countries and everything, including the Duke of Weaseltown, Wesselton, who is there, because he wants to learn about why, Arendelle's been closed off and everything. Anna, this is of course where we get Anna's, song, for the first time in forever, where she's singing about, oh my God, like these windows open, those doors open, all this stuff is going on, like she'd been trapped in the palace most of her life for the past, 13 years at this point in time. And now, the castle is opening up, even if it's for a day. And she's like, a fun song from her point of view and everything. And then also at the same time, we do get like cuts to Elsa where she's just like, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. I don't know if I can do this type of a thing. And we're getting like a slight bit of taste of what'll be going on in Let It Go. And we see Elsa that every time she takes her gloves off, almost everything that she touches starts to get frost on it, because she's so nervous that she can't control her powers. And she's become so reliant on wearing the gloves that she can't, she can't control her powers so much without having the gloves on, because it's become this habit, this crux that she has to use to hold them, hold the ice powers back. We do see Kristoff and Sven in the crowd and everything, because Kristoff has now grown up and he was adopted by the trolls, and he is now this, ice deliverer and such like that. And as Anna is out roaming around, she runs into Prince Hans of the Southern Isles. And we see this, attraction and, this like, like, oh, cute meet type of a thing happen, of course, between the two of them. Between Elsa and Anna. Between Hans and Anna. And, he's obviously quite charming and everything. So we'll see what happens. Those of you that have seen the movie, of course. And again, if you watch any of these reviews without having seen the movie, go watch the movie first and then come back and watch the review, because otherwise it doesn't make much sense. Now, does it? Or you just think I'm crazy. Well, that's still not really left up for debate, but Anna has to rush off to the church for the whole, coronation ceremony and everything. And I guess the closest thing that we would have in comparison to a coronation ceremony today, I mean, like in the United States, we have like, inauguration day and everything for the president and such. But in Europe, there's, of course, the most prominent thing that we've seen in the last, so many years was, of course, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, which, if I remember the dates correctly, she was, her coronation, like official, televised coronation, happened in the same month that my mother was born, which is just kind of fun. Also, in weird things that relate to my life, we have two girls at my church. named Anna and Elsa. They are sisters. Anna is the older one and Elsa is the younger one. And the younger one has blonde hair and the older one has slightly darker hair. And the younger one, who is named Elsa, is a lot more shy than the other one. And I'm just like, okay. I don't know if they're, if they were both born before the movie came out or not, or subsequently that has happened. That just coincidence, they're both named Anna and Elsa, but still. But, back to the actual movie, just weird things that line up in my life. But the closest thing that we have to a coronation, of course, is, of course, we have inauguration day here for the presidents, and of course in Europe, in England, of course, there's, the coronation day for the Queen, and Queen Elizabeth's coronation was the most recent one in living memory. In regards to that, not that other countries haven't had, other inauguration days or other types of coronation in regards to some of their royalty, but that's the main one that people tend to think of, and it looks like in Arundel that the whole shebang, yes, it's a very nice occasion and everything. It's like it's much bigger because, the gates have been closed for the past, 13 years in regards to the palace and everything, that now the people are able to come into the palace and see what's going on in the palace, and it's a much more joyous time. We see the coronation. Elsa is still very much, scared and everything. She does, there's this representation of, like, you hold this staff and you hold this orb that has like a cross on it. And this is also something that's reminiscent of like coronations from Europe and such like that anyway, because it takes place in the European peninsula, European, continental area and Scandinavian area, where this, this whole concept of, the crown and, to a degree religion were also tied together. Particularly in England, where the Queen of England is also the head of the Church of England. So there's that difference there. But what we see happen is Anna, or Elsa, has to take her gloves off because she can't have them on while she's doing this because, protocol. And, we see ice start to creep up over the orb and over the staff and everything. And she's still just like this terrified thing, very reserved, very terrified. Still very beautiful, but very reserved and terrified in regards to what's going on. And then, of course, we cut to the party, and we end up getting all of this other interaction between, like, Elsa and Anna, where they finally actually get to interact with each other, for the first time in forever. That, they're really, kind of forced to talk to each other. And we do see them still kind of like, they both still like chocolate. They both, Anna is very kind of stilted in regards to like how she's used to interacting with people, because she's so used to only interacting with probably the servants. And even though, the king and queen did not strike me as people that were like horrible to their servants or anything like that, considering how much we see that the servants and the people do seem to care about their king and queen and about Anna and Elsa in general. I do not think that Anna would have been mean to the servants, and she probably would have been quite polite to most of the servants that were in the castle, or the guards that were in the castle and such like that. Just because that seems to be her, her understanding. But, people who she's not used to talking to, she's a lot more awkward with. And, they're just like talking and everything. And then, of course, Anna has to go and dance with the Duke of Weselton, who is just so weird. And she, and then Anna kind of goes off on her own, and she ends up interacting with Hans, and they're just like talking and interacting and having fun and getting to know each other. And Anna points out to Hans that Anna had shut me out a long time ago and everything, and Hans is like, well, I would never shut you out. And then, of course, here's where we get the song, Love is an Open Door, where we have Anna and Hans singing. Admittedly, the song itself is a very, very nice song and a very cute song and everything. And, Anna and, Hans are, obviously, they're supposed to be falling in love throughout the course of the song. And we get, all these different, fun things, we finish each other's sandwiches and, all these other fun lyrics and everything that's just like the two of them interacting and everything. And like Hans is explaining, it was like, I have 12 older brothers and everything. And, 3 of them pretended I was invisible for like a year or whatever the case was and such, you know. 12 brothers. Oh God. I mean, my mom is 5th of 7 and my dad is the 1st of 6. And, both of my grandparents on my dad's side, I think they both had 3 siblings. And then my mom's mom, I think had, I want to say 7 siblings or so. I don't remember. I come from big families. Yet, it's just my sister and I in regards to where we are now. But I have a bunch of cousins and everything like that. I actually had a cousin that got married recently. So at whatever point in time this goes up, congratulations to Emma and Alex, who got married recently. The very small wedding, but congratulations to them. And I mentioned this in previous videos. My grandfather is a pastor, and he got to officiate the wedding. So that was a very nice thing to still be able to have that happen. But back to this. I am talking about love, and I am talking about marriage, because by the end of the song, Hans, of course, proposes to Anna. And, Anna, of course, says yes. And then her, Hans run off to go and tell Elsa and introduce Elsa to Hans. And she's like, oh, and this is Prince Hans of the Southern Isles. We're engaged. Elsa, excuse me? Engaged? Yes, we're going to get married. But where do we live? I don't know. Well, we would live here. But what about your brothers and everything? And it was like, Elsa's like, Anna, stop. You can't marry a man you just met. And, literally this is like antithesis of like everything that's ever happened in a Disney movie. It's like Snow White just met the prince, and then of course they go off and they get married when she wakes her up. Same thing with Cinderella and her prince, Aurora and Philip, and then we get Ariel and Eric. Admittedly, they know each other for a couple of days, but she's already in love with him. And then of course we have Jasmine and Aladdin, and then Pocahontas and John Smith don't get married, and in the sequel she marries John Rolfe in the end. And I've went over that whole historical context thing in my Pocahontas video. Yeah. But it's like so many of the other different Disney princesses, Belle being the exclusion, that she didn't just end up falling in love and marrying a man she just met. She actually spent time getting to know the beast. And then, of course, with Aladdin and Jasmine, we do still kind of see that as well, where they spend time getting to know each other via the animated series and everything in the other movies, and then they eventually get married. And then same thing with, like, Hercules and Meg. I mean, they know each other for a little while, and they do get married, and she becomes a freaking goddess by a technicality. But, a lot of that's kind of like this whole thing of, like, no, you can't marry a man you just met type of a thing. And Anna is very upset by this, and her and Elsa just kind of end up having this whole giant sister spat in the middle of the ballroom. And unfortunately, Elsa ends up releasing her ice powers and making these giant ice spikes appear around her. And of course, this scares everyone that's in the room, because, there's all the guests in the room and everything, and Elsa and Hans and the Duke of Weaseltown, and like, all the other guests and everything. And they're like, and they're like, all just, scared of her. And she runs out into the crowd. And unfortunately, being around like all these people and everything, and like, it was like, she looked scared. And they're like, are you all right, Your Majesty? And, unfortunately, she freezes this fountain in the middle of the town. And, she then runs off. And of course, because her powers are kind of, going all crazy, she runs across this lake that runs off into the mountains. And, she freezes the lake as she's running across it and everything because of her power. And she freezes the entire harbor. And it's like very, very cold and snowy and everything that's going on right now. All over the capital of Arendelle. And Anna is like, I have to go after my sister, because if there's anyone that can talk any sense into her, it's me. And he goes after her, or Elsa, or Anna goes after Elsa. She leaves Hans in charge, He is, by technicality, her fiance at this point in time, even though the queen hasn't given her blessing. But Anna runs off on her horse to go find her sister. At this point in time, Elsa has already made her way up to these high mountains and everything, the northern mountains that are in their kingdom. And this is, of course, where we get the song Let It Go, which, as I've stated, I do love the song. It's this moment in Elsa's life where, yeah, I know that down the line, it's like, yeah, I got like overplayed on the radio, and I'm sure so many kids' parents got so annoyed with the song. There are worse songs your child could be listening to. But, at this moment in Elsa's life, she spent the last 13 years having to hide her powers, having to hide it from her sister, having to hide it from all of the staff and everything, all in this event to protect people from it, because she was so scared of everyone thinking that she was a monster, of what would happen, what's going to happen if people find out about this. They're going to think I'm a monster. They're going to want to, kill me or lock me up, or I'm going to get banished, or if I become queen, they're just going to fear me. And she spends her entire life thinking that, and that's why she's, so terrified of her ice powers, that by the time she gets to the mountain, she's just like, screw it, I'm going to use my powers. And this is, of course, Let It Go. It's her just, letting her magic run wild, building stuff, making, ice sculptures, makes Olaf, builds herself this huge and beautiful, immaculate, elaborate ice palace, and the staircase, and it's gorgeous, and she, changes her dress, and it's just a beautiful sequence, and I do love the sequence. And okay, yeah, if you get annoyed with the song, I can understand it. Trust me, to a degree. At some point, I'm just like, okay, that's enough Frozen. And this is coming from the person that would happily listen to almost every single Disney soundtrack in order, and would most likely know most of the lyrics to these songs, because I am a Disney nerd. And don't worry, I'm not going to start singing Let It Go. But, that's why I had all this, ice stuff and everything. And admittedly, and I will fully admit this, when before we moved into this house, we lived in an apartment, and it was actually, surprisingly enough, my room of the apartment was bigger than my room here, and is bigger than this room, by about another, half of this room. It was quite a bit bigger. One of the other room that I have here that is my actual room has light blue wall paint. And when we had first moved in, I was like, oh, I kind of want to turn this into a little bit of a Frozen themed room. I kind of wanted to turn my new room into kind of a Frozen themed room. So I had gathered up a bunch of these little pretty things and stuff like that. Things that looked like ice. This is just a Christmas ornament. Things that looked like ice and things like that I just thought were so pretty that I wanted to use in the room. I have yet to do that because there's other things all over my walls at this point in time, but I dug them out to use them for this because when else was I going to use them? But what ends up happening is, of course, Elsa builds that ice palace and everything, and she's, very happy and everything, and she's doing it because she's finally free and able to use her powers, but she's also away from everyone to the point where she can't harm anyone else because she doesn't want to hurt her sister and she doesn't want to hurt her people. And her thought is, oh, if I'm up here and all on my own, then Anna can be down there in Arendelle and she can have the gates open and she can be happy and everything. Anna has now been traveling through the mountains or through, the forest, and she ends up getting separated from her horse, and, it's snow, deep snow everywhere, all over the place, and she ends up falling into this, stream, and her dress kind of freezes, and she ends up finding this, wandering Oaken's trading post and soda. And she goes in there and, she meets the owner, Oaken, And he states that, oh, it's a real howler in July. I'm not going to try to do his accent. I apologize. But, you know, she gets this dress and she gets these shoes and everything that are much more winter, you know, style clothing and everything, and rope and everything that she can use to go and try to find Anna, or go to try to find Elsa. And what ends up happening is this, you know, this is when Kristoff enters, and he comes in and he's just like covered in snow, and he wants to buy carrots and he wants to buy rope and a pickaxe to be able to help him, you know, travel and everything, because he knows exactly how to travel. It's just he didn't have the correct supplies and he needs carrots for Sven. Oaken kicks him out because he's like jacking up the prices on everything in the winter supply stock. And Anna just decides, okay, I'm going to need him to help me because I have no idea how to get up this mountain. And what ends up happening is, of course, Anna is just like, okay, fine, I'm going to need this guy to help me because I don't know how to get up the mountain. And Kristoff and Sven have now, you know, kind of hunkered down in the barn to spend the night. And Anna goes in there and she's like, okay, no, you're going to take me up the mountain immediately because I need to go find my sister. And we do this, like, this great little sequence between, like, Kristoff and Sven where it's like, you know, Kristoff, you know, plays his, you know, banjo, ukulele, whatever it's called, his guitar type thing that he has. And, of course, Kristoff, you know, speaks for Sven and everything. He gives him this voice and everything. And they do this disgusting thing where it's just like, Kristoff will give Sven a carrot and Sven will eat part of the carrot and then Kristoff will eat the other half. And I'm just like, no, don't do that. If you're going to do that, at least bite the carrot first and then feed it to the freaking elk, caribou, reindeer thing. I just find that disgusting. And just like, oh god, no. I even had that theory when I first saw the movie. I'm just like, oh god, that's disgusting. Cute, but and what ends up happening is, of course, Kristoff agrees, and him and Anna and Sven start making their way up the mountain on Kristoff's sled. And Kristoff and Anna are talking, and she's just like, well, you know, what happened was I had gotten engaged to this man I just met. And he's like, whoa. You got engaged to a man you just met? And, like, you know, this whole thing and everything between the two of them, and it's just like, oh my god, they're just so funny. And he's like, well, what's the guy's last name? Of the Southern Isles? I love that. That is a funny line. I'm like, by technicality, I guess that is his last name. But, you know, it's just like all this funny stuff of just like, oh my god. And they're just, you know, and then they get chased by wolves. And, you know, they were arguing, and then they're still arguing while they're, you know, dealing with the wolves and everything. And unfortunately, the sleigh ends up getting destroyed. Somehow blows up because reasons. And then, you know, Anna and Kristoff and Sven are okay, and they start, you know, Anna's just like, okay, I'll keep going on my own. And Kristoff is just like, oh god, this woman is insane. And, you know, Anna had promised him, it was like, I'll buy you a new, you know, I'll buy you a new sleigh and everything. And Kristoff and Sven kind of have this conversation, quote unquote, where it's basically Kristoff argues and then Sven does the counter argument. And he's, you know, and Kristoff is just like, okay, fine, we'll help her. And he goes off and, like, they're going to help Anna as they go up the slope. And then while they're going up the slope up to, you know, this, you know, frosted over glen and everything, with like the dew on the trees has been frozen so thoroughly that it's just like frozen on like all of the trees to the point where it's just like you know, orbs of ice everywhere and like all this other stuff. And this is where they run into Olaf. They run into this talking snowman, the snowman that Elsa made that is alive, and Anna remembers him. And Anna, you know, Anna gives him a nose that's a carrot and everything. And we get Olaf's song, in summer, which I just I the movie would have been perfectly fine without this song in it. This song is not necessary. Funny to a degree, yes, but I put it more on the annoying side. I like Olaf, but this song was unnecessary to have in the movie. We get it. He's a snowman that wants to see what summer is like. There's only so many different puns that you can use in regards to, I wonder what snow does in summer. There's only so many things that you can do with that. But as they're, Olaf joins their group, and they travel, and then they get to where this rock face is, and they're going to try to climb up the rock face. But Olaf is like, if it makes any difference, there's a giant staircase made of ice going exactly where you want to go. And they're just like, Anna's like, oh, thank God. And like, they get to the ice staircase, and Kristoff is just like, oh my God, this staircase is so beautiful. It's like so perfect. And he's just like, oh my God, like he's in love with the staircase because he's an ice guy. He's also a very nice guy, but he's an ice guy in this case. And it's just like, oh my God, like he's like in love with these stairs, and it's hilarious. And, Anna and him go up the stairs with Olaf, and Anna goes inside, and she tells Olaf to wait. She goes inside because she just wants to talk to Elsa on her own. And Elsa and Anna talk in the Ice Palace. During this time frame, we also cut back to Arendelle, where we see Hans providing aid and shelter to the people of Arendelle and everything, handing out blankets and, making sure that everybody has food and, coming to the palace where it's warm and everything. And Anna's horse comes back, riderless, and he is going to head off into the mountains to go and try to find Elsa. And Duke of Weaseltown sends, 2 of his bodyguards to just basically kill Elsa if you can. And, Hans and the rest of the group go off with them, go off up the mountain to go to try to find Elsa. Because it's like, okay, well, Anna's horse came back, so we have to assume that something bad happened. By technicality, there's this whole thing of like, if Hans had just stayed in the castle, would things have been okay? If Hans hadn't gone off to try to find them, would things have turned out better? Possibly, but that's not where the movie went. As I said, Anna has now gone inside of the Ice Palace to go to try to talk to Elsa. And she, is, she's trying to talk to Elsa and explain, she's like mesmerized by the palace that like Elsa made all of this with her powers. And Anna, of course, still does not remember that Elsa has always had her powers. She just thinks that they're new, or that like she just didn't know that Elsa had them. And we have this moment where Anna is just trying to convince Elsa to come back, and Elsa's like, no, just, you go back down to Arendelle and have fun and everything, and, open the gates and everything. And Anna's like, well, you kind of set off an eternal winter everywhere. And Elsa's like, I don't know how to change that. I don't know how to, reverse the ice. And, like, Anna just has this complete faith that it's like, well, of course you can figure out how to do it. It's your power, therefore you should be able to fix it. And Elsa is just like, no, Anna, I can't. And unfortunately, at some point during this time frame, Olaf comes running in, and Elsa is just amazed by the fact that Olaf is alive. That Olaf actually, not that he was dead, but that he actually came to life with her power, because she's only created, pain with her power for the most part. Or that's the pieces that she focuses on, is that she just creates pain. Whereas in this case, it's this new thing, this thing that's alive and has like childlike wonder with the world and everything. And Anna is still trying to convince her to come back. And, Elsa, unfortunately, this is where her power kind of overrides itself again. And, because Anna is, trying to convince her and get a reprise of For the First Time in Forever. And, with Anna singing and, like, Elsa singing, like, a different, more, disturbing version of it to a degree. And Elsa's power, unfortunately, flies out of, whack and, hits Anna in the chest. And Kristoff comes running in, and he, sees this, and unfortunately, Elsa is, who's this guy again? I was just like, what the frick is going on with you and guys in the past 2 days that you just met? And Elsa then creates another, giant, giant snow creature that is nicknamed Marshmallow, which I like Marshmallow. Marshmallow looks freaking awesome, by the way. She creates Marshmallow, so he's like this giant kind of Yeti-fied version of Olaf. And he chases Anna and Sven and Kristoff and Olaf out of the castle and kind of down the mountain, and Anna and Kristoff and Sven and Olaf are able to escape. And, after some, dealing with, Marshmallow and running away from him and everything. And Marshmallow is now kind of this, guard of the palace, of, Elsa's ice palace. And Anna and, Anna and Kristoff and Sven and Olaf are now, kind of safe. They fell down the mountain, but they landed in, snow, so they're okay because certain velocity, and of course Kristoff is an expert in regards to snow and ice and mountain climbing and everything like that, that he knows it's like, okay, there's snow down there. There's 20 so many inches or so of fresh snow. We'll land on it. We'll be fine. And they do get, they do manage to land safely and everything. And then we see that Anna is now being affected by when Elsa's ice power hit her in the chest from hit her in the heart. And Kristoff is like, okay, I need to take you to my friends, who he has referred to as the love experts previously. And he takes Anna and Olaf to where all the boulders live, where the trolls live, and they're introduced to them. And we see Kristoff is kind of explains that they're not necessarily his biological family, but they adopted him when he was younger, when him and Sven were much younger, 13 years ago. And what we see happen is, the trolls wake up and they're, talking to Kristoff, and then they see, oh my god, he brought home a girl! And then we get the song Fixer Upper, where they're first talking about Kristoff, and it's like all of his flaws and everything, telling them to Anna, because they think that Kristoff and Anna are gonna get married. And then it switches on its head, because Kristoff is like, no, I'm not gonna marry her. Besides, she has a fiance. And then it flips to, it's like, so she's a fixer-upper. And we get the line, get the fiance out of the way and everything. So, and we, they're all singing and dancing, and it's just this fun, musical number that I actually like more than Olaf's song, because it actually does a bit of showing of like, oh, this is kind of what the trolls are more like. I understand that Olaf's song is kind of like the I want song. It's like, I want to see what summer is like. But I prefer the trolls song to this, the fixer-upper song to that. And then it's revealed that Anna is still, that that she's slowly basically freezing from the inside out. And this is when Grandpa V shows up, and he explains that he cannot save her because it's her heart that is slowly being frozen, that was struck by the power, and that the only thing that can save her is an act of true love. An act of true love can melt a frozen heart. And so they take this to mean that, oh, we have to get Anna to, Kristoff, to, Hans and Arendelle, so that way, he can kiss her and, reverse the curse, stop the curse. And, Hans and Kristoff and Sven and Olaf are now heading towards Arendelle, rushing their way there. At this point, Hans and his party have arrived at the ice castle, and they make their way inside after they battle Marshmallow and everything. They have to deal with Marshmallow. And then the Weasel Towns, Weaseltons, henchmen have gone inside, and like they are actually trying to kill Elsa, like either hit her with like, a arrow, or just, crush her or something like that. And she's fighting back with her ice. She doesn't necessarily want to kill them, but she is trying to defend herself. And Han shows up, and he does try to talk her down, like, no, don't be the monster that they think you are. And he's trying to, get Elsa to, not hurt anyone, surrender and come back and everything. And, they are able to capture Elsa. She gets kind of knocked out, and then they capture her and they bring her back to the dungeons. And, she wakes up in the dungeons and she has her hands are chained and encased in steel mitts that are then chained to the wall. And, Hans comes in and is talking to her, and she's like, "You have to let me leave." And he's like, "You can leave as soon as you, unfreeze the kingdom." She's like, "I don't know how to do that." And she's like, "Just bring me Anna, or, whatever." And he's like, Anna hasn't returned yet. And this just makes Elsa very, very sad. And, she just wants to get away from the kingdom, because if she can get away from the kingdom, she can get away from hurting people. And, at this point in time, Kristoff and Anna and Sven and Olaf are, racing towards the castle to get Elsa to, to get Anna to Hans, so that way he can kiss her and prevent and stop her from dying, because she's slowly freezing, and we see her hair turning more and more white, and she's slowly getting colder and colder, and can't really move so well and everything, because she's slowly freezing and her body temperature is dropping rapidly, which basically it's like a metaphor for like hypothermia, but it is a much more permanent version of hypothermia. And they're they're racing to the castle, and they get to the castle. Olaf gets separated from Kristoff and such. But Kristoff gets onto the castle, and he tells them, get her to Hans and everything, and they do get her to Hans. And, her and Hans are alone, and she's like, "You have to kiss me to break this spell." And she's like, "My heart's been frozen, and you need to kiss me with an act of true love." And then, of course, this is where we get the reveal flip of Hans, where he's just like, "Oh, Anna, if only there was someone out there who loved you." Which, okay, yeah, sure, let's go with that. We get this big character flip in regards to Hans. I really don't know where I stand on whether or not Hans actually, had been a villain the entire time, and then something changed him or whatever. I really don't know where to land with that. And he's like, "You were so desperate to love that you were willing to marry me, even, just like that." And he's like, "Well, I was going to, I would have preferred Elsa, but, no one was getting anywhere with her. So I figured I'd go for you, and then I would arrange an accident for Elsa, and then that would make me king of Arendelle, because there's no way I would ever become king of my own country back in the Southern Isles with, 12 older brothers." And he's like, "Well, now that you're going to die, and I'm going to go kill Elsa, then, I'll be king." And, he leaves Anna, trapped in this room with no fire to keep her warm, and he's running out to go and kill Elsa. At this point, Elsa has basically, frozen her mitts to the point where they shatter, so that way she can escape, and then she's, trying to work her way away. And we have this where, Hans goes off and he talks to the council, and he's just like, "Anna died before, Anna died, just after we got our vows out. And, now it's like, now I'm the king of Arendelle, because, now it's, Elsa is the one that caused this, so now she has to be killed." And he's, going to go kill her and everything. And, she's already escaped. And at this point, Kristoff and Sven have, kind of ridden away from Arendelle, and then they see, this giant storm kick up, because it's Elsa's power kicking up. And Sven, basically, it's because I love the interactions that we get between Kristoff and Sven, because just he'll say something and then he'll look at Sven, and Sven is just as a ring, he'll just give him this look. And then Kristoff is like, "Okay, fine, we'll go back." And he's like, "Okay, I have to go back for Anna, because, yeah, I love her." And he's, starting to ride across the fjords and the frozen lake on his reindeer to try to get to Anna. And at this point, Olaf has managed to find his way into the castle to where Anna is, and he actually is trying to stoke the fire to get her so she's not so cold and everything. And he's like, Anna asks him, "Well, what is love?" Because she doesn't know what exactly love is, because, like, yeah, she loved her parents and she loves her sister, but she doesn't understand exactly how to show an act of true love. True love's kiss is one thing, but it's also, we see Olaf literally willing to melt to protect Anna. Because he's like, love is, is putting someone else's needs before your own, and that some people are worth melting for, which you would think would already apply as an act of true love, because, Anna, Olaf will melt with the fire around, and we already see him kind of melting. And, Anna is, she doesn't want Olaf to die, so there's already that act of true love with, like, him willing to melt for her. But, at this point in time, Olaf goes and looks out the window and he sees Kristoff riding across, the frozen lake through this storm to try to get back to Anna. It's like, there's your act of true love. And then, they get Elsa out of the, they get Anna out of the castle, and they're trying to get to where Kristoff is, and this whole scene happens along the giant frozen lake that they have going on, or the frozen harbor. And, the castle is being frozen more because of Elsa's power, and the weather outside is going crazy. And Olaf is, helping Anna try to get, cross the ice to where Kristoff will be. And at this point, Elsa has escaped and she's on the ice, and Hans is there and he's trying to find her. And we get this whole, the whole climactic moment where Hans and Elsa are kind of near each other, and he's ready to go and try to strike her. And Anna and Kristoff are almost to each other, to the point where, she could run to him and get her, her act of true love, her true love's kiss. But, Hans told Elsa, that Anna is dead and that your magic is what killed her. And we see this moment where Elsa's magic just, like, stops. Because, just like I've mentioned with Scarlet Witch, her magic is tied to her emotion. And that's kind of the way that's been implied for most characters that have power. And, like, even in, like, Harry Potter, your power is tied to your emotion. With Sailor Moon, their magic is tied to their emotions. With, Black Clover, their magic is tied to their emotions. That's always been evident when it comes to, like, magic of almost any kind, is that it has to be tied to your emotions one way or another. And whether they're good or bad emotions can be left up for debate. But Elsa just collapsed, and, like, everything just around them goes quiet. Like, the storm just kind of stops. And Hans is, raising his sword and prepared to kill her. And Anna looks over and she sees her sister, and, like, she can choose. She can run to Kristoff and get her, her act of true love and save herself, or she can go and prevent her sister from dying. And, of course, she uses the last of her strength to dash over to where Hans and Elsa are, and she, blocks his sword with her hand just as she, freezes solid, and his sword shatters. And, he's bewildered, and, like, Elsa sees Anna, and she sees Anna completely frozen, and she, of course, is devastated by this. She sees her sister now is fully frozen solid, and, Kristoff and Sven have run over, and, like, they're watching this, and Hans is watching, and, like, I'm assuming some people that are, like, at least able to see from the castle are probably watching and seeing what's going on now that, like, the storm stopped. Everything is still frozen, but, like, the storm stopped. And Elsa, is, like, hugging on his, frozen statue. It was like, no, don't, you can't leave me, type of a thing, And it's, this is where it reveals that Anna's sacrifice to protect Elsa is the act of true love. Is this, true love doesn't have to be between you and the person you're in love with. Yes, we get, like, the kisses, true love's first kiss, or true love's kiss, or in Beauty and the Beast, where it's like, you have to fall in love with her and she has to fall in love with you, and you have to admit it and everything, is the way that the spell works. And with this case, it's the act of true love is where you're willing to sacrifice yourself for someone else. Is where you're willing to sacrifice yourself for someone that you love. And this is where it is, like, this parent and child type of true love, like what we see in, Maleficent and the first Maleficent, where, Maleficent's kiss is what wakes up Aurora, as opposed to, the prince's kiss because he's just met her. Because it's not true love. With Maleficent to Aurora, it is true love. And then, we see this, in Once Upon a Time multiple times where it's, yeah, we still get the true love's kiss of, the prince and the princess kissing, and that wakes them up or breaks whatever spell or that. But we also get where Emma kissing Henry is what wakes him up and what breaks the curse. And like these other moments where it is this kiss of true love, where it's this parent to a child. And in this case, it is a sister to a sister. It is siblings to each other. And this would apply to, a brother that did the same thing, or a brother and a sister that did the same thing as well. That true love is not relegated to only someone that you're in love with. It is someone who you are willing to put their needs before your own, as Olaf said. And Anna thaws out, and then Elsa realizes that love is the key, and that she, I do put this as a little bit of like, okay, she went from not being able to really control her powers to being able to control them. So just like, I'll buy it a little bit, but, just for the sake of it, of getting the story wrapped up. And Elsa then, uses her power to actually reverse basically all the the ice and everything that she froze, and she, fixes everything that's in the harbor and like gets rid of all the ice that's all over the houses and the castle. And, she gives Olaf a little flurry so he doesn't, so he can continually stay cold, so he doesn't, melt. And then, Hans gets punched by Elsa, or gets punched by Anna off the boat, and he gets locked up. And what ends up happening is, of course, we cut to, just like finishing everything up. Hans gets thrown in prison, and he gets taken back to his kingdom, to his brothers, Duke of Weaseltown. They cut off trade with him and like send him on his way. And, Anna kept her promise, and she, buys Kristoff this, nice sleigh and everything, and him and Sven are the official ice deliverers of, Arendelle, which is just funny. And so we get those, and we get Kristoff and Anna finally kiss. And so we see them happy, and we see Olaf happy, and we see Elsa happy, and then we see Elsa and Anna finally having fun, and Elsa being embraced by the people in the kingdom and everything. She uses her ice power to kind of decorate the castle a little bit more, and makes like an indoor ice rink so they can all skate around, and like her and Anna are having fun skating around. And so we just get this fun thing. There is an end credit scene where it's just basically Marshmallow is still up at the palace, up at the ice palace, and he is set to guard it, and he finds Elsa's discarded tiara, and he puts it on. He's just like, it has crown. And he's like the new ruler of the ice palace. So that's just like a funny thing that they do there. For the cast list, we have, of course, Kristen Bell as Anna. We have Idina Menzel as Elsa. We have Jonathan Groff as Kristoff. We have Frank Welker as Sven. We have Josh Gad as Olaf. We have Santino Fontana as Hans. We have Kieran Hinds as Grandpappy, and we have Alan Tudyk as Duke of Weselton. Kristen Bell has been in multiple shows. She's, I think she's currently in The Good Place, that's on Netflix. Idina Menzel has been in a previous Disney movie. She was in Enchanted, where she plays kind of the love rival a little bit for, Giselle in that, the princess in that, and her character is actually the one that marries the prince. Jonathan Groff, who's Kristoff, of course, was in Hamilton. He played King Henry VIII in Hamilton. No, was it Henry VIII? No, it was King George in Hamilton. Excuse me, it was King George in Hamilton. Frank Welker, just look up almost any Disney movie and random animals in the movie. He's a Boo and a whole bunch of other characters. Josh Gad, of course, is Olaf. He's, of course, been And he was in Book of Mormon. He was one of the original guys in Book of Mormon. He's been in quite a few other things. He was, of course, in the live action Beauty and the Beast, where he played LeFou. And then the other ones I really don't know too much else about them. Alan Tudyk, of course, previously was in Wreck-It Ralph, where he played King Candy, and he's been in quite a few of the Disney movies recently. The origins for the story in regards to using the Snow Queen at Disney were way back even in 1937 with Walt Disney himself. They had wanted to do a bunch of different shorts based on Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. As I mentioned in the Little Mermaid video, they had worked with Kai Nielsen to create beautiful artwork to do like a Little Mermaid version, to do a Little Mermaid story. And then, they wanted to do like an ice Snow Queen version, Snow Queen one as well. And of course, the Steadfast and Soldier and some of these other ones that they wanted to do. In regards to like more shorts, or more of like a feature length thing, but it was just like the mini episodes of the different stories, like The Ugly Duckling and The Red Shoes and The Emperor's New Clothes, which of course later on The Emperor's New Clothes would be part of the inspiration for The Emperor's New Groove. And like all these other things that they did, there was like so many other Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales that they wanted to use, and they had artwork of them made. And then even later on, they had wanted to make a ride at either Disneyland or Disney World that was going to be like all of this like ice themed things for like this ice themed place in winter for you to go through. And like they had found beautiful artwork of it, and they had wanted to use some of that. Well, they had found artwork of it, but that was like after they'd already started to design things for the actual movie for Frozen itself. So that's pretty cool. They worked in, different things like that. And I always like that, where it's just like Disney comes about on itself one way or another. And I always love that. In regards to trivia, the names of 4 of the main characters are inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's names. Hans, Kristoff, Anna, and Sven. Hans from Hans, Kristoff from Kristen, Anna from Andersen, and Sven from Andersen. Anna, though, may have actually been a tribute to Andersen's mother, named Anna, or Annie, and whose husband and Andersen's father was also named Hans. In one part of the film, Kristoff asks Anna what the name of Hans's best friend, and Anna answers probably John. It turns out that Hans is nothing less than a Danish equivalent of the English name of John. And the name Hans is so commonly used in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Hans's home kingdom, the Southern Isles, may be located in Denmark, since Denmark is south of Norway, where Arendelle is located, and is comprised of hundreds of isles. So, lots of different things in that. There's, the next video that I'll be doing for Disney, of course, will be the other half of the Frozen stuff, which will be a bunch of the miscellaneous things like Kingdom Hearts and Once Upon a Time and the different shorts that they've done, and Wreck-It Ralph, and such like that. So that'll be the next one. And then I want to say after that, I think it's Big Hero 6 is the next one. I think. And then possibly Moana after that. I think I have those right in regards to order. But yeah, we have my nice little ice setup back here. We'll see if that sticks around. But that's what I have for this. So I thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye! In Arendelle's fair kingdom, a ruler did appear, born with a secret power so great, alone she stayed in fear. Although the force was hidden, one day she let it go, and all the land was covered in eternal ice and snow.